Hello, welcome. It's Pauline back again with the ExQISSite Quilt. It's episode 15. Very excited because we're not far off. Another couple of episodes and we'll be starting to have a beautiful quilt. It is so exciting to be able to see everybody's work. We're getting lots of photos sent in to us, so please, if you haven't sent us a photo of what you're doing, we would love to see it because we need to know that we're able to teach you how to do all of that quilting, joining all of those sashes up, and now we're going to show you how to put everything together in the next few episodes. So this episode, we are going to be doing some applique because I'd like to introduce applique into some of your sashings, which we've already showed you how to cut them out and glue them in place and put them onto your sashes. But now we need to show you how to stitch them up. So we're going to work on the machine in this lesson. To make you aware, the machine that I love to use and that I choose to use is a Bernina machine, the Bernina B570 QE. So I'm going to talk about the settings that I use on my machine to do my applique, but I would recommend you look in your manual for your brand machine and your model and do a little bit of a test on the stitches you would like to have the options to use and the stitch length and the stitch width. But I'll be showing you what I use and then you convert it to what your brand machine. So the first thing we'll get you to do is set up a little sample, just like this. I've just sandwiched 2 scraps of my background fabric together, ironed it onto a piece of wadding. I've cut out some shapes, and this is what I'll use as my sample to get all my stitch width and length right, and just to show you a few different stitches that you could use. If you're not into machine appliquing like I'm going to show you, there is no reason why you can't hand blanket stitch around these. I'm not a hand stitcher, I'm a machine stitcher. But if you wanted to do hand blanket stitching around these with needle and thread, by all means do it. But if you are going to do it that way, I recommend you don't take your stitches through to the back. Just take them through the top layer and the batting and come back up, because if you've got a nice back on the back of your sashings, you probably don't want to see it on the back of the quilt. But in saying that, most of our sashings are going to go over the top of a strip of fabric. So if you went right through, it won't make any difference. But if you were appliquing, let's say, a quilt where you'd already quilted all the blocks, then done the applique, and you're going to quilt right through the applique right through to the back of the block, it wouldn't look nice. But with your sashings, because the sashing, like if we were going to blanket stitch around this one by hand, we've already got the backing on here. So we wouldn't want to see a hand blanket stitch coming through to the back. But when we've got appliques like this that's just going onto a sashing, you could blanket stitch by hand and you could put your thread right through to the back, because this is not going to be, the back of this won't be seen. So it's just deciding which method you would like to use to suit your particular style of what you like to do. So set yourself up a sample. We're going to be doing some blanket stitch on our Tulip block, which was one of the smaller blocks that we've done. I've already stitched these ones down, but once I do the little sample, you'll see exactly how I've done that. I've stitched this one down, just in preparation to get a few things ready. I've got half of this one stitched, but I'm going to show you how to stitch the edge really closely for your bias. We're going to do a little bit of stitching on our lattice. Now, when we get to the lattice one, we just cut a piece of background fabric and we did the lattice work and the applique shapes straight onto that background fabric. But what we do after you've finished getting that ready, you need to iron a piece of your batting onto the back of this. And I've already ironed it on here so we can move on quickly. I've already ironed a piece of batting onto the back of that. There is no backing on this one. Okay, remember, no backing on the back of this one. We're just going to stitch through the lattice and the background fabric and the batting. Later on in one of the other episodes, you'll see what we're going to do with this. We're also going to stitch down some of our triple sashing and our 4-up sashing, these two. But we're not going to stitch every row. All we're going to do is stitch the outs right on the edge of the top piece. We're not going to do these pieces here or this edge. These are going to float like a little flange or a peeper. By stitching down either side of that 1/2 inch one, it's going to secure the one underneath. Then when we go to put the quilt, the sashings onto the quilt, that's when we'll stitch down this edge. So remember, you're just stitching either side of the top piece, and the same when we get to the 4-up. You're only going to be stitching the side of the top piece. These will all be loose pieces. Once the quilt's washed and the glue lets go, these will sit up like a nice little paper strip or a flange, and it'll look really, really effective on your quilt. Some people may prefer to stitch these down. There is nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. But please don't stitch these outside edges, because that will be done when we apply it to the quilt. So let's talk about a few things at the sewing machine. I'm going to demonstrate to you blanket stitch applique on the machine, raw edge applique, and a satin stitch or a buttonhole stitch on the machine. Now you can make the choice of what style that you would like to stitch down with. I have my machine set up with the mono poly thread in the top of the machine, and I have mono poly thread in the bobbin of my machine. Now when you set it up on the top, make sure you put this bit of gauze. Make sure that gauze jacket is on your thread to keep it controlled so it doesn't come off the spool too fast and get caught underneath. I have the open toe foot on, the foot that we did with for the quilting and the foot we used for piecing our sashings together. That foot is still on my machine. The feed dogs are up, and I've got the slippery mat on the machine. So the way I've had my machine set up right through the program. I've got my bits all glued on. Now, another thing that I love to do as I'm sewing, and I've mentioned this many times before, I put the rubber door wedges under the back of the machine so that I can tilt the machine a little bit forward so that I can see the edge of my appliques better, and so that I can sit at a better posture. Now, to set our machine up for blanket stitch applique. And because we've got this fine thread on the top and the bobbin, this is where doing a test will let you know whether you need to adjust your tension of your top thread. My machine default setting for my tension, when I turn it on, it goes to about 5.25. Now I find that's too tight a tension for this thread. So I'm going to take my top tension down to 4.25. I find that's a nice tension for the monopoly on the top and the monopoly in the bobbin. You find out what is your right tension. I usually don't touch the bobbin tension. I can usually do it through the top. As you come around the corners, like as we come around the circle here and around the small leaves, you may need to adjust the pressure off the foot so that you can pivot the fabric under the needle nicely. I'm going to take my top pressure on my machine from 70 down to about 35. And that will allow me to adjust my pivoting as I come around those corners. Lock it in. Now, if your top pressure's 20, you might come to 18. If your top pressure's 10, you might come to 6. You've just got to find out what is the right amount of pressure to take off to get around these curves. So on your sample, just keep lowering that pressure to see what is going to be the right amount of pressure for you. So that's where we're going to start. Now, for my machine, my blanket stitch, I'm going to choose stitch, what number is it? 1309 for anybody that's got the 570 QE. Going into my settings, I'll bring up 1309. Now, my default stitch length is 2.60. My default width is 2.3, but I find that's way too large. So I'm going to make, and I've got it all written down here because I can never remember, I'm going to reduce my length to 1.9. So I'll dial it down to 1.9. And then I'm going to make my stitch width 2.6. So I've just gone up a little bit. I want it a little bit wider. So that's the setting that I'm going to use to come around one of these leaves. Now, it's going to be a little bit hard for you to see with the clear thread, but I think once you do your practice, you'll find there's no rule with this. It's just finding a nice stitch that you like on your quilt. Remember, it's your quilt. Do it what suits you. It's not what I do or anybody else comments on. It's about what you like. So you may like to draw your bobbin thread up to the top so that you don't get it messy underneath. So I'll just go needle down, needle up to do that. Pull my bobbin thread to the top. Then oops, I'm on the wrong side. So we're going to now work out where we need the needle to come down in the side of the work. So if we can come in close here, we want the needle to sit right against the edge, right on the white, practically on the white. So the straight stitch goes on the white, which is your background fabric, and the blanket stitch side of it goes in onto the blue. Okay, so once we start, we can do just a couple of little stitches in the one place. So now we're just going to come around, just going to cut those bobbin threads off so that it doesn't get all tangled up underneath everything. And we're just simply going to stitch around. It's a very easy process. Just take your time, slow your machine down if you need to. I'm slowing down because I'm getting right up to that point and I want a stitch to stay right on the point. I'm using the knee lift on my machine to lift the foot here, but you may have to lift your pressure foot. It's whatever your machine does for you. And then we just keep coming down the other side. Now I'm using the clear thread because I don't want the blanket stitch to show up too much. I just want to see the beauty of the appliqué. And that's as simple as it is to do the blanket stitching around your shapes. Just use a tie-off button if you've got it, however you like to finish off your work. Lift your pressure foot. Now I'm going to introduce you to these beautiful snips. These are what's called Corey snips. Now I'm recommending these because see how we've got the big long blade and the short blade. Now I find a lot of times, particularly if I don't use the scissors on my sewing machine, a lot of people don't have scissors, but I find it doesn't cut the fine thread nicely. So I use these. This little blade down here is what's going to cut your bobbin thread and it's not ever going to cut your fabric. So just come in underneath and slide it and cut your thread. and then come back up the top and cut your thread. I just love them, how they just come in underneath, and we'll cut everything off for you. We have an unpicker at the end. So if I make a mistake, I can use that unpicker. I can use it as I'm coming around. If one of my shapes, as I come around here, let's put this pressure foot down, up here. If I'm coming around and one of my shapes are moving, I can use that little pointed edge right on that point, and it holds it perfectly for me. I just find it's a perfect tool. It's got so many uses, and they do come with these beautiful tweezers. So I can pick up the finest thread with these tweezers. I can't even see the fine thread, but I can pick up that fine thread as easy as anything with these tweezers. So I love this set that I brought. I found it in America, and now we do have them on our website because they are magic. They're called Corey's Snips, but that's just a little bit of a plug for something if you need something that goes in under there nicely. Okay, so now we're going to change to, let's do some zigzag. Okay, I've just unthreaded my machine. I'll just thread that up again. Zigzag, once again, it's just finding the setting that's right for your work and your machine. I'm going to put my setting on. I'm going to use stitch number 2. So come back up. It's my second stitch. It's a regular zigzag. I'm going to length 0.95. So we're coming down a lot smaller now. And a lot of machines, you know, your stitch length might be on your machine. You might like to use, I don't know, 1.8. You've just got to find a nice small stitch that's going to suit around those small pieces we're doing. And I'm going to go length 2.0. So that's what I've worked out suits me, what I'm doing here. And, oops, get on the right one. I'll just thread this needle and we'll be off and running again. Sometimes the needle threader doesn't suit the fine threads, but it went through perfect for me. So I'll get those little tweezers and pull my thread through, and then we're ready to start again. So fiddle with your settings, find the settings that you need, and once you work on your sample, it'll tell you which is the best stitch, which stitch you like the best. So I'm going to go around the circle now with this zigzag. It's the same thing. Line up the edge, have your needle right on the edge of the outside edge of the fabric, and off you go. If you find it's too big on your sample, just keep adjusting it. Now that's feeling a little bit tight coming around the curve. So I'm going to take a little bit more pressure off the foot to make it glide easily under that needle. Now it's easy. So I've taken it down to 16. And you can see how I can pivot this under the needle. Normally coming around a curve, you've got to keep stopping and lifting the pressure foot to be able to go around a curve when you're appliquing. But taking the pressure off, it's brilliant. Having that mat underneath, it's allowing it to slide. And there we are around the circle. So that's our circle done. We'll just snip our threads off. Now, raw edge. I'm going back to a straight stitch. I'm going to reduce my stitch length down probably to about, I think about a 1.9, maybe a bit big, but we'll just test that out. So now we're going to stitch around this leaf. Now raw edge is just a straight stitch, stitching right on the edge of the fabric. They call it scratchy appliqué, they call it raw edge applique. There's lots of different names from. A lot of people don't like it. I like it. It doesn't fray out. It gets a bit woolly on the edges, but it's a nice effect. But it's your choice. Remember, it's your quilt. Now, once again, I'm going to take a lot more pressure off because I want to be able to maneuver around that. So I'm going down to about 9 on my machine. And I'm just going to do a straight stitch right around the edge. When I get to the point, oh, one more stitch. Lift the pressure foot. I'll use the knee lift. And around we come. Now, I suggest going around this a couple of times because you want to get really some nice stitching on that. Lift the pressure foot. And that will hold it in place beautifully. But you've got to like this technique. You've got to be happy with it. So by doing a trial, you'll know whether you like it or not. Just lock the thread off. And there we go. It's very, very simple. Come in underneath, cut your bobbin thread. And there we go. Now, the other thing I want to show you is stitching down your bias because we've got a lot of bias there. So when we stitch down the bias, we're going to stitch on either edge. Now, a lot of people ask me, would I use a twin needle? We could use a twin needle on this sample because remember, we're not going to see the back of it. If we use a twin needle, I don't like the look on the back, so I'd never put it right through to the backing because it crosses over. It's not a nice stitch. I usually prefer to use a single needle and I stitch down either side. It doesn't take long at all. We're going to put our piece down, put your pressure foot down. Oops, my needle. And then we're going to move our needle over right close to the edge. So if you can see here closely, I've got the inside edge of this open toe foot sitting right against the bias. It's sitting right here. You can see where that hook is, right there. And I'm moving my needle so the needle is right on the edge of my piece of bias. And this is so many great features on our machine. If we start to use them, it makes your job so much easier. So I'm going to move the needle over. And then I'm going to put some more pressure back on the fabric because I want it to sit nicely here. So I'm going back up to normal pressure on my machine. So now all we're going to do is use a straight stitch and stitch really close on that edge. Now when I sew, I'm not watching the needle. I'm watching the inside edge of that foot. So I'm keeping my eye on this edge of the foot so that it's keeping it up close to the edge of that bias. And you'll be able to stitch so close to that edge. You'll be so proud of yourself. Just come down one side. Now I'm coming down close to this circle. I could stop right here. One more stitch. I can pivot and stitch really close to the edge of that circle and come back up the other side. And you will get beautiful, beautiful stitching. And it takes a little bit of practice to get your eye in, but once you get your eye sitting right there where it should be, it'll be a perfect job. I know you can do it. So we're now going to just show you if we're going to be stitching down this bias. You can see I've already stitched some of it. Same thing. And it's nice using this clear thread because we don't have to keep changing thread to match the fabric that we've got in our pieces. So just come around and stitch this Now we're going around curves, so we might want to take a bit more pressure off so that we can swing around those curves. I'm coming down to about 16. See how now I can swing that around? But if I had left full pressure on, I would have had to keep lifting the pressure for it. So use all the beautiful devices that our machines allow us to use. They're there, we just need to know what they're for. Right. Now, when we come to doing the lattice, oops, wrong scissors. When we come to doing the lattice, this is a little bit of a tricky one. There's a couple of ways we can approach this. We could have just laid the lattice down and the bias and stitch that and then come back and put all the appliques on. But I wanted to put the appliques on so I could show you what it looked like. So if I decided I wanted to stitch either side of all the lattice pieces, I would get a damp cloth and put on top of these pieces that I've glued down, and the glue will dissolve. That's why I love using that glue. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stitch down here with a straight stitch, and then I'm going to raw edge stitch around all of these shapes. So I can come around, come back down here, stitch on the edge here, come across, back up, and then I could start coming down this bias and coming down and just work your way around and stitch all the edges, because you need to stitch all the edges down so that it looks really attractive. But I'll show you mine stitched down in the next episode, and the next episode is so exciting because we're going to be joining the pieces together to make our units and applying all of our sashings. Then we've only got to stitch them down. Then we'll do an episode on quilting our borders and finishing off the quilt. So till I see you next time, learn about your machine, look at your manual, test out what your machine will do. I chose this machine because it had all the features that I needed to be able to put all my quilts together like I'm showing you. Love it. But you've got to love your machine. You've got to know what your machine will do. Set it up with your wedges, sit back, learn how to release the pressure, learn what all your stitches are about, learn how to adjust your needle position and use the 1 foot. So till I see you in the next episode, happy stitching. Bye for now.